but it's thick down in there, and I'm down there hunting quite a bit, and now I'm coming across people that are eyewitnesses that are coming forth saying, I saw a big 9 or 10 foot bipedal creature with red glowing eyes freaking me out, you know what I mean, around their campsites and all that. So
hello and welcome back to the Phenomenon Report. I am your host, Kelly Kleinman. Today on the witness stand, we have a gentleman from my home state of Ohio who had a couple compelling encounters with something big and scary. No, it wasn't the gals from The View, as one listener suggested. Rather, it was something that clearly didn't want him hunting in its own territory. A theme that seems to be somewhat consistent as we infringe on their living space more and more. Scott Seymour, take us back onto the Wayback Machine to the start of the century. The year was 2000. It would be only one of two times that the Wolverines would beat the Ohio State Buckeyes on the gridiron this century. But it wasn't a Wolverine whose ground you were trespassing on. Scott, the mic is yours.
okay, well, like you said, it was 2000, and I lived in a little town in Michigan called Frankenmuth. Now, Frankenmuth is, they call it basically Michigan's little German Bavaria. The town's set up like if you were going to go to Germany. They have festivals, they have a lot of bands, they have really good fried chicken. So it's kind of known for that. And I live just outside, north of the town, about 2 miles outside the town. And I hunted on a gentleman's property that I became good friends with. I don't really want to mention his name, but he lived in a town called Mayville. And it was about an hour, probably as the crow flies, probably an hour and 20 minutes from where I lived. So I would have to get up pretty early. I mean, hunters want to get in the woods before the sun comes up. There's a lot of deer moving back into the bedding areas just as the sun's coming up. So you want to get in there and get set up. And a lot of us do it. I'm saying common knowledge for hunters because a lot of us do this. So this particular morning in November, I'm already starting to get goosebumps, man, because every time I tell this, it puts me right back there like I'm standing there. But I drove over there. I parked my car on the landowner's property. I got out of my car, and the first thing I noticed when I got out of my car is there was no sound. Like it was like dead quiet. And I mean like I've been in the woods when it's been quiet before, but this was like uncanny quiet. Like there was no insects, no nothing, no crickets. I mean, no nothing. I mean, it was dead quiet. You could literally, and I'm not exaggerating, you could have dropped a pin on the ground and heard it. That's how quiet it was. And I thought, man, this is really weird. Now I'm getting my stuff out of my car, getting my pack and everything, making sure my bow's all set up and ready to go. And I started down the hill. Now the landowner lived about 40 feet above the bottom floor of the forest. And I say forest because I've hunted block timber. Let me explain what block timber is. Block timber, like in Ohio, is you might have 100-acre woods or 200-acre woods, and there's field all the way around it, okay? And they put crops. A forest is something that goes on for miles. It may go on 5, 6, 7 miles. It may be 8,000, 9,000 acres, depending on how big it is. This place I was hunting, I think probably, and I hunted quite a bit of it, it probably went for 5, 6, 7 miles. It's a pretty big place. So I had to walk down in about 40, 45 feet down a steep 2-track. Okay. If people don't know what a 2-track is, you could drive a car down it. It's pretty wide. You could drive 4-wheeler, car, whatever you want down into it. And I started down, I remember getting down behind his house and I got right to the edge of the woods. Now, the other thing I want to set up about this is it was on a morning where there was no moon. There was no moon in the sky. It was phased out. You know how the moon goes through certain stages. You got a full moon and then there's no moon. So I couldn't literally see the hand in front of my face. And when you get into a woods or a forest, all the light escapes. It's gone. Like you can't see anything. So I was like waving my hand in front of my face like this. I couldn't even see my hand when I got inside there. So when I came down the 2-track, it came into the woods so far, and then it stopped, and then I would have been facing south. Okay, I came in from the northwest. I came down, and now I'm facing south, and it stops, and the 2-track goes east. Okay, so you could keep on going east on the 2-track. It goes back in there for probably, I don't know, 1,000 yards. It goes way back in there. And then what I used to do is I would turn left right there, and I would walk about, I don't know, 15 or 20 steps, and there's a game trail. And I would go down that game trail, and then I would go probably another 200-300 yards back to my stand. So I wasn't real far from the guy's house. Like when all the leaves fell, I could see his house, but I was back in there far enough. I was 3 football fields away. So I would take this game trail, and then my hunting setup was like a bowl. If you could imagine a bowl with the front of the bowl broke off, it was all high ridges. Guys out west call them saddles. Mm-hmm. We call them bowls here. But I had ridges all the way around my back, and ridges would come down to the right and left of me, and then it dumped into like a swamp. So it was all swamp in front of me, and I was facing east. If I was sitting in my stand, I was facing east. So I turned onto this game trail, and I started heading south. Okay, I got about, I don't know, 16, 17 steps down that game trail, and I stepped on a twig, and it went like that. It made a cracking noise, and I'm not kidding you. I got goosebumps right now. When I stepped on that twig, something to the right of me, probably 25 yards from me, it wasn't real far away and it wasn't real close, maybe 30 feet, got up. And when it got up, there's leaves all over the ground. So when it got up, it was huge. I'm not kidding you. I mean huge. Now, I don't have any bull elk. I don't have any moose. I don't have any black bear. I don't have any brown bear. I don't have grizzly bears. I don't have anything that sounds like that getting up. I've bumped deer before. An average deer, an average buck is 160 pounds to 220 pounds. You might get a 240-pound deer, but I busted them, in the dark where they've been bedded down, and, they're galloping down the woods. They sound like a deer. You can hear 4 legs hitting. Mm-hmm. This thing got up, and I literally froze, like not in fear, not being scared, because I didn't know what it was in the moment. But I was just like starting to be in terror, because I'm thinking to myself, what in the heck is this? Because it's making so much noise scraping the ground to get up. I wish I had it taped so you could hear it. It just made so much noise that I knew it was huge. It was big. And it immediately took 5 steps to my right and got in behind me. It got in on the 2-track. I'm down the game trail, okay? It got in behind me, and it's now north of me. I'm south of it, but I'm south of it. And it took 5 steps like a person, like a bipedal, and I could hear it walking like a person. And I almost said, hey, I'm hunting over here. You know what I mean? Because we do that when we're in the woods, because you don't want to get shot. You don't want anybody shooting at you, because there's a lot of trigger happy people that get in the woods, you know what I mean? And they hear something, they'll just fire off even in the dark. There's been a lot of people that have been killed around Ohio and Indiana because of that. So I almost said, hey, but I didn't. And I heard it walk behind me, and it stopped. Now, I'm stuck in a crouched over position, because the last step I took when I cracked that twig, I froze. And I had that flashlight on my thigh, and I had my bow in my hand.
So you were bent over.
I was bent over and frozen. Yeah, and frozen. And I'm like, I hear this thing walk to the right of me that sounds, I mean, just getting up, it sounded like it was 600 to 900 pounds. I mean, it just made so much noise, and it didn't sound like a deer getting up. There's one characteristic of it. It didn't sound like a deer.
Did you hear it breathing? You're like
no.
There's so much brush.
No, that's the other thing. I could not hear it breathing. It was dead silent. I heard it walk. It got in behind me. Now, I'm sitting there and I'm going, I got goosebumps all over me. I'm sitting there and I'm still crouched over and I'm like, okay, what is this? What is this? And it's walking like I am. What the heck is going on? Like, what is it? And it's directly behind me. And the creepy thing was, it did not move. It just stood there and didn't move. Now, here's the stupid mistake I made. This is how dumb I am. It had already moved, and I took that flashlight off my thigh because I'm like, I'm going to see what this is. So I shined it over like that, and I couldn't see it because it was directly behind me. And, like I told Wes, I'm not an expert on this. I don't know if they can see in the dark. I hear they hunt at night. I hear they mostly move at night. Then I hear that's not true. A lot of them move during the day. They have what they call day watchers and all that. I didn't learn about any of this until years down the road because, in 2000, I barely got through this with my sanity. You know what I mean? Sure. So anyways, I'm like, okay, something's behind me. I got to get to my stand and keep moving. So I started walking, and I took 5 steps. And when I started walking, it started walking. And now it's going east, okay? I'm going south. It's going east. So I'm walking. It starts walking, and I can hear it crunching. That's how big it was. I mean, I could hear it when it walked. And then I would stop, and it would take one more step and stop. Okay, there's the next characteristic. This thing is trying to be stealthy and smart, and it's only moving when I'm moving. Deer don't operate like that. Deer, the minute you spook a deer, they're gone. They'll run down 300-400 yards and they'll stop. And if they can wind you, or they know you're an apex predator, which I don't know how they know. I don't know if they know we walk bipedal. I don't know. But once they find out that you're an apex predator, they're going to snort, and they snort all over down the woods. So then you know if for sure it's a deer, but they snort. They don't walk when you walk and stop when you stop. This was something of intelligence. I mean, it wasn't a deer, and I have nothing else in there that could be this big and anything that's going to act like this characteristic-wise. So I took another 5 steps. When I took another 5 steps, it started walking. And I stopped, and it took another step and stopped again. So I did it the 3rd time, and it started walking again, and I could hear it. And I stopped, and it took one more step. And I'm like, man, now I'm creeped out. Like, I don't know what the heck it is, but it's something evidently really intelligent, and it's mimicking what I'm doing. And now I've heard years down the road where, hunters have been out and saw a juvenile, and they'll raise their hand, and it'll raise its hand. They'll rock back and forth. It'll rock back and forth. I heard they mimic people. So, now I know later on that there's nothing else it could be. But the crazy thing was, the 3rd time I walked, I stopped. Now the hair on the back of my neck is up. The hairs on my arms are up. I'm feeling all this terror. Like, I'm like, this is too creepy and too scary for me. So I'm like, I got to get to my stand. So I take off running. I pull that flashlight off my thigh, and I go running down the trail, and this thing starts running. And when it started running, the footfall was like thump, 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 thump. Like there was 4, 5, 6 seconds between each footfall. That's how I knew it was really big. Because if you or I run, we're how we're going to run across the ground. This thing was big strides, big strides, big strides, big strides. I get up over the ridge, down into my stand, By now, I'm freaked out. I dropped my flashlight twice. I had to pick it up. I got my bow hooked. Now I hear it go from a run to a walk. Now it's still walking, and it's still walking, and it's still walking. So I climb up in my tree. I get my safety harness on. I pull my bow up. I unhook it, and I put it up on the hook, and I almost collapsed because I had so much adrenaline pumping in my body that
yeah.
I was like breathing heavy. Oh yeah, man. I was like scared to death.
Yeah. So
I'm sitting on that stand, and then all of a sudden I hear tree limbs being broke. And they're, like if you stand 100 feet from me and I break a twig, you might barely hear it. But when you grab an 8-inch tree limb or a 4-inch tree limb and you pull down on it, and that cracking sound, cracking and breaking, that's what I was hearing, like really loud cracking and breaking. And by this time, it was 175 yards from me out in the swamp. Like it was way out there. And it's eerie dead quiet. So I can just hear this thing busting limbs one after another. And I'm sitting there with my hands in my face going, is this really happening? Like, is this really happening to me as I'm hearing limbs break and crack and pop and being pulled off a tree, to the point where I start hearing it walk again. And I'm saying to myself, God, please don't let this thing come back, because I got to get all the way back out of here, which is three and a half football fields away to my car. And how am I going to get out of here? In fact, I set out there, and back in those days, I hunted till about 9:30, 10 o'clock. If you didn't see anything by then, it's pretty much over for the afternoon until you went back in the evening. I sat up in that tree stand till 11:30 before I got down. I was that scared. I was afraid it was going to get me. You know what I mean? Now the sun's up. It's 11:30, and I climbed down, got my bow and everything unhooked, and I climbed down. And I told one of my friends years later, and he's one of my friends from Ohio, and he said, well, did you look for footprints? I'm like, dude, are you serious? I'm not looking for footprints. I'm getting down that damn game trail, and I'm getting to my car and getting the hell out of there is what I'm doing.
You only had a bow, right?
I had a bow, yes. And I had no arrow in it, and I couldn't have seen to shoot it in the dark. It was the darkest time to be out in the woods. There was no moon. There was no light, no nothing. I mean, when you can't see your hand in front of your face and something big gets up and it makes all this noise getting up and it don't run away like a deer, and you don't have anything else big in the woods. When I got home, I took a piece of paper. I drew a circle, and I drew another circle, and I drew all the animals that could have been in the woods, okay? And I took all of them out that couldn't have made those noises and walked like a human being, okay? Raccoons, squirrels, coyotes, deer. I took everything out, and the only thing was left in that circle was
Joy Behar?
Yeah, right.
We're going
right.
back to the beginning.
Right. Yeah, right. But that's the only thing that it could have been, and the things that it couldn't have been were in the other side. And it's and I didn't go back there for, oh my God, it was a month and a half, and I was married at the time, and my wife kept asking me, how come you're not going back over there? You're deer hunting every day. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to hunt the woods behind our house because I got permission to hunt over there. That's closer to the house. I can get back home. I can help you out with it. It was an excuse every time she asked me, because I was scared to death to go in there. You know what I mean? I was scared. Like, I have never been back there. I did.
Back since? You've never been back since?
Well, I hunted. Here's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
I hunted in there for 3 more years. Okay.
Never saw it.
I never saw it, but I never went in the dark. Like, I would go in at first light. I would come out as the sun was going down. The sun goes down, you got pink sky. Mm-hmm. It's already starting to get dark in the woods. But here's the crazy thing. Year after year, I would go over there, and it first started with whoop, whoop. I would hear that in the swamp, okay? And I would be like, and I'm sitting in my stand and I hear it over here, and I would look, and when you're hunting, like your eyes are trying to focus, in an area that's thick, and you're like really looking like, what? Did I just hear a whoop? What the heck's going on? And then some days I would be there and I would hear a tree knock way, way the heck out there. And then 10 minutes later, I'd hear one way over here.
Yeah.
And it would just be a single knock, okay? Wouldn't be double, triple knocks, be single knock, single knock. And then I would have days where I would be sitting in the stand, and on the other side of the ridge, or the bowl, or the saddle, whatever you want to call it, I would hear, see if I can whistle like it. I don't know if I can. I would hear I would hear that. And, my girlfriend, she's a bird watcher. So she'd say, oh, that's this bird. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This sounded like a person doing a bird whistle. It didn't sound like, it didn't sound like a bird. This is something that's got a big lung capacity, and it's really loud because, when you're in the woods, you got squirrels running around, things like that. You got all kinds of noise. And I would hear this. And it would go on. And now I get up and I'm looking around the tree because this is west of me. So I'm looking behind the tree, and, the saddle's 25 feet high. Okay. So I can't see over it. And I keep, is somebody whistling at me? Is another hunter coming in? Whatever. But this would go over the course of 3 years. Like some days I would be in there and I would see deer, whatever. And then some days I would be in there and there's nothing. There's no deer, no squirrel.
Let me ask you a question. You mentioned that this place was known for its fried chicken. Could this have been a chicken foot?
Well, it could have. Who knows? It would have to be an awful big chicken. Let me tell you what.
I'm a big fan of Invader Zim, by the way. But anyway, so go on. This is compelling. Now, it seems like there might have been more than one, and that would have been my thought when I'm there.
Yeah.
Gosh, this one ran away, but maybe it ran away obviously, so I think it ran away. So when I take off in the other direction, they're waiting for me. Of course, it could have taken you anyway, right? Either way.
Well, see, I found out later on, doing research on this stuff and listening to other people's accounts and what's happened. I've heard some places where they'll hide right off a trail and they'll hunt and they'll get, the one will drive a deer and the other one will smash its legs with a club, whatever. And that's how they hunt, whatever. I'm just glad that didn't happen to me. But it's really weird because, like I was just saying, when they were there, I saw nothing. I'm talking now, I'm not exaggerating. I had so many squirrels around me that if I was just a squirrel hunter, I could have ate for 2 or 3 years. Big, fat squirrels all over the place. When I would hear a knock or I would hear a whoop or whatever, there was nothing moving. I mean, nothing, dude, nothing. No squirrels, no birds flying over, no crows, because there's a lot of crows up there in Michigan. They're a very, very intelligent bird. They actually have a language too. And there was nothing, man. I mean, absolutely nothing. And when I would see a deer, I knew they weren't there because I didn't see animals in there when they were there. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, this is in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right?
No, it's not in the UP. It's down in the thumb. Okay. It was in the thumb. Right. Yeah, that's why I said up in the UP they got black bear. Yeah. They got big animals, but down here in the thumb, no. You got nothing like that. The biggest animal is a deer and then maybe a coyote. I don't even know if there's wolves up there. I've never seen one. I've been in the woods up there for 15 years. I never saw a wolf or, I never even really saw a coyote up there. I've seen more coyote in Indiana than I've seen up in Michigan. So, but, like I said before, when they weren't there, I would see deer. I would see movement. I would see animals. When they were there, I saw nothing. So one time, I think it was October. Yeah, it was October. I shot a 7-point, and it ran back in the swamp. And I'm like, oh God, I got to go back in that swamp and go get that deer. So I waited. I shot it early. I shot it like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I sit there till about 3 o'clock. I'm like, okay, I got to go back in and get this deer. So I go back in the swamp. I find the deer. It's about 170-pound 7-point. That's a lot of deer for one person to pull. Yeah. So I started back through the swamp, and I would go up 25 yards. I would put my bow down. I would go back. I would grab the deer by the horns and pull it up to the bow. And this is how I was getting through the swamp. I started hearing whoops. I started hearing whistling. Whoop again, whistling. And it freaked me out so bad that, and I've never done this in my entire life. I got that deer back to the tree where my stand was, the base of the tree, and I left it. And I got the hell out of there. I didn't even field dress it. I left that deer. I didn't care if coyotes came in and ate it. I didn't care. I was so extremely freaked out by here because this was close to me. I was hearing this, but it's so thick back in there. I couldn't see movement, nothing. I hear whoop. I turn to my right, and there's nothing there. You know what I mean?
I wonder if they thought you might have gifted it to them.
I don't know, because I've never tried that. I never tried to gift anything. I just wanted to deer hunt. I didn't want to seek these things out. These guys that are, doing into the 400, I know they're trying to prove that they exist. You don't have to prove they exist. I don't need the government to tell me these things exist. Right. People ask me all the time, Scott, do you think they really exist? And I just laugh at them, because it's not, after what's happened to me, it's not that do they exist. I'm a knower. I know they exist because I know what I heard. Your eyes can play tricks on you, but your hearing isn't going to play tricks on you. What you hear is what you hear.
Well, take us to 2015, because 15 years later, and Michigan still had only beaten Ohio State one time.
Right. They don't beat them too many times. I know you have to plug that. It's great. It's a lot of fun when you're a Buckeye. That's right. Go Bucks.
Right.
Right.
But now my kids are in Santa Clara, so baseball, but football.
Right.
I don't have one, so it's
right.
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 But
I want to tell you about the now 2003. I want to tell you, this is the creepiest part to me.
Oh. Didn't know we had one. Go for it.
This gets me a little bit. I remember it was the end of November, like the 25th, 26th, and I hadn't seen anything all day. And this is the weird part. I got down on my tree. It wasn't quite dark yet. It was just starting to get dark. I start over that hill, and I start down that game trail, and I'm walking, and I got my flashlight in my hand. And I'm walking, and all of a sudden I hear I feel something hit me on my shoulder. And I'm like, I turn around real quick, and I pop my flashlight on just to make sure. And I'm looking, and I look down, and it's a stone about the size of a 50-cent piece. Not a rock. Rocks are a lot bigger. This was about the size of, a little bit bigger than a quarter. Hit me in the shoulder. So I'm like, I was next to a pine tree, and I didn't want to look up because I've heard these things get up in trees.
That would be scary.
And I'm standing right next to this pine tree, and it's starting to get dark. And I'm like, I got to check it out. So I popped my flashlight, and I looked up, and I just thought, and this is the stupid part of me, is I thought, well, maybe there was a rock up in the tree, and it fell out. Maybe a bird knocked it out, whatever. So I start walking down the game trail. I take about another 15, 16, 17 steps. I feel a pop on my shoulder again. I look down. It's another stone or rock about that big. Now listen, I really felt that on my shoulder. I look down, and that's sitting there. I turn around again, and I look, and I'm doing a 360 now. Not just directly behind me. I'm doing a 360 all the way around me. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like something threw a rock at me twice, or a stone, or whatever. And I just remember in my mind, I said, okay, guys, you can have it. I'm going home. I'm not coming back no more. I'm out of here. You know, I'm gone and I'm out of here. You can have this place. And I walked another, I don't know, 10 or 12 steps to the 2-track. Didn't get hit with nothing. I walked up the 2-track. When I got up by the landowner's house, I ran to my car. I threw my stuff in it. I got in my car. I never talked to the landowner. And that was the last time I was back there. And I haven't been back there since. I won't go back there because it gives me the chills and the willies to, even when I see it in my mind, and the encounter I had with Mr. Big Feet, and hearing that sound, you know, and then, you know, I told my ex-wife, we were getting divorced, and we were at a custody hearing thing, and we were waiting to go in, and I just said, you know, I have something that's been eating at me for quite about 3 years, and I got to tell somebody. And she's like, well, go ahead. I said, you know, I trust you. I've been with you for a long time, and you know, this is what happened. Well, out of her, I get the smile and the giggle, and I'm sitting there stone-faced, like I'm not laughing or anything. And you should have seen the smile just went away, and she could see, like, I was like white as a ghost. And she's like, you're kidding me. I'm like, no, this all happened. Like, this is real. I believe in this. I encountered it. This is all the things that happened. I told you it really happened. I really got hit in the back with a couple stones or rocks, and it terrified me. You know, that was it for me, getting hit with the stones. Now you're making a connection with me, like the tree knocks and the whoops and the whistle, whatever. Okay, you're letting me know you're there. But when you start interacting with me and you start throwing a stone at me and it's hitting me, you didn't throw a stone past me, so it would go past my peripheral vision and I would see it. You're hitting me with a stone. You know what I mean? But the 7-point deer that I left there, I went back the next day. I got one of my friends to come with me. CJ's about 6'4", weighs about 300 pounds. He's a big dude. And I took him back in there with me. I said, I got to get this deer. I said, I was too tired to drag it out or whatever. I made some excuse. And we went in there and we drug it down the trail. And I said, okay, here's a good spot. Now I'm going to field dress this deer. I want you to look around a 360 perimeter of me and you. And he's like, what? I said, I want you to just look around in the woods while I field dress this deer. He's like, okay, you know, whatever. So he's standing and he's looking, and I'm trying to field dress this deer and get all the internals out as fast as I can. And man, we got that booger up the 2-track and threw it in his van, and we were out of there. And like I said, 2003, my ex-wife was the only person I told. Until I had my second occurrence, did I start telling some people. But I told 5 people on one hand because I didn't want ridicule. I've been laughed at a couple times about it, and it cheapens the experience because I was there. Yeah. I know what I heard. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not there. You can laugh all you want, but you get in the woods and have the same thing. You're going to pee down your leg because it's that scary. You know what I mean? So I didn't tell a lot of people. You know, I told one of my best friends in Ohio. I told my ex-wife, one of my best friends. You know, this was 15 years. Over the course of 15 years, I told 5 people because I didn't want people to laugh at me and think I'm nuts. You know what I mean? You know,
Scott, a situation like that, you take the average man or woman, and fecal evacuation is imminent. People don't want anything to do with any of that spooky stuff.
Right.
But it happened to you again in 2015.
Right.
Crazy.
Well, the thing.
It's completely.
Yeah. The thing with 2015, and I still go over there and hunt.
And you heard it. So you heard a shriek, right?
It screamed at me twice. I was hunting in the woods. It was in November again, so there's a lot of leaf fall on the ground. All the leaves are almost off the trees. And the sun was getting down, and I just don't like coming out of the woods in the dark unless I've shot something and I'm hunting for it. Then you got to find it. You got to be in the dark. But when you don't get anything, I mean, rut was winding down. I saw some deer. It was an eventful day. I didn't shoot anything. And there's a pink sky. You know, the sun's just going down. It's almost down. And I'm like, well, I got to gather my gear up. Now this wood's 30 acres. This woods is not big, but kitty corner from me is a 250, 300 acre woods. It's a big woods. Okay. So I got down out of the stand I was in. I was down at the very corner of the woods. Okay. The house that I was staying at, which was my girlfriend's mom and dad's property, it's about 120 feet, 25 yards from me. So about a football field and a quarter.
Not too far.
Yeah. So, and in the field, they got, 300 acre field. It's a big field. It had soybean in it. So I come down, get out of the tree, get all my stuff. I go out about 65 yards. I go out. I start walking down the middle of the field. As I get down about 50 yards, I hear something to the right of me coming from the corner of the woods. And it's walking bipedal like a person. I'm getting goosebumps once again.
Daytime,
yeah. It hasn't quite got dark yet.
Yeah.
So I'm walking down through there and I stop because we're going to intersect. It's coming right towards me in the woods. Now, if you know anything about hunting, when you're on the inside of the woods, when the sun goes down, light escapes the woods. You can't see 10 yards up. You can barely see. When you get out of the woods, the sun hasn't went down yet. You're in an open space. You got light. Okay. So as I'm walking and I'm hearing this thing walking towards me, it stops, and it stops about 10 yards inside the woods. And I'm now stopped, and I'm looking in its direction, and it won't come out. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm having flashback from 2000. Here we go again. Please, not this again. So here's the crazy thing. My body went down to the ground. I didn't even think to do that. I went down in a crouching position because for some reason I was so scared that I wanted the beans around me to cover me up so I could be as low as what the beans were. So I'm crouched down. Well, it lets out a scream. Okay. And the only thing I can compare it to is if you've ever been near an air raid siren or a tornado siren, how it just gradually starts low and it goes higher and higher and higher, and then it's full-blown high-pitched.
Hold on.
Yeah. Yeah, like that, but more of a howl to it.
Yeah.
Okay? It's kind of Wes, when I was on Wes' show, he did have you ever heard the Ohio howling?
Yeah, he plays that every 12 episodes.
Yeah.
Only so many vocalizations, but yeah, it's
yeah. So it was.
I'm a subscriber, by the way. I listen to Sasquatch.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, but it was.
One thing I'll say, you're never going to hear outro music on my show that's Billie Eilish.
Right.
What is it with the Billie Eilish? I wake up in the middle of the night because the show's over, and he plays it out. He vamps it out for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's always some depressing.
Yeah.
Flat beat.
Right. But that adds to the show. You know what I mean? It just kind of it adds to the creepiness. You know what I mean?
Well, she's as creepy as it gets. Anyway.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. Sorry. So, anyways, it's between the air raid siren and the howl, somewhere in the middle. Okay. It lets out the first one, and I'm down on the ground, and I'm like, "What is this?" It's screaming at me. So it sits there. I thought it was like 3 or 4 minutes. It could have been a minute. It just sits there quietly, and then it really lets the scream out. And this was so big that I literally dropped my bow and I put my hands over my ears, and it was like I didn't have my hands over my ears. It actually hurt my ears. And it was really big and drawn out to the point where there's no mountains in Indiana, but when it stopped, it echoed.
Hold on. Let me relate a similar story. I was speaking to a gal. Her former husband was an Indian in Northern California. He was a Native American, and they went camping. And they went camping on native land. and she went with her husband and the chief and the shaman, and a couple other people. And they said, where we're going, they're going to be all around us, but they'll make themselves known, but don't respond. Just if you don't respond, they're fine.
Right.
We can do that. So she's there, and they're sitting around a campfire, and she said it seemed like it was 6 feet behind her. She heard exactly what you heard, and she was frozen, literally frozen.
Oh yeah.
Move for 15, 20 minutes. Same story. I was at Mammoth doing a little squatching myself, and we were talking to one of the fellas on the, he wasn't a ranger, but he was in ski patrol, and he went out and he did rescue missions. They're called mountain patrol, whatever they're called. Anyway, he was telling me a story that his dog, they love to tree bear. So when bear would come down, they'd run after him and tree him, run him off.
Right.
There was something out there that smelled really bad and was making these grunts, and the dogs wouldn't go anywhere near it. They were trying to literally dig under his house. And then it gave out a scream, and he said he couldn't move for 50. He was absolutely frozen for 50 minutes. He had never heard anything like that. Literally, the sound freezes you.
Yeah.
It hits you.
Well, it just, in 2000, just hearing it walk, I mean, I can't compel it enough to hear something walk bipedal, but it sounds really big. I was frozen, like I could not move. And I've heard all kinds of occurrences from people, how they were frozen, how they were going to pull a gun out of their holster, but couldn't get the gun out of the holster. But they felt very comfortable with the gun, but couldn't get it out because one was breathing behind them and they could hear it breathing, and they heard one snapping over there. So when I was in the bean field, I was down on one knee, like a runner's thing. I was down on one knee. And when it did the second scream, and it was real loud, I mean, something with the lung capacity, I mean, it's just huge. And when I heard that, and I heard it echo on flat ground, okay? That was it. I was off to the races. Yeah. And, I was on Wes's show, and I said, it was almost like one of those cartoons where your feet leaves before your body. That's how it was for me. I mean, my body was up and moving. Yeah. I didn't have to think about running. And in fact, between where I was in the house, I almost fell twice in the bean field because I was running so fast. Now, I was 50 years old at the time. I'm 55 now. So I was 50 at the time, and sprinting and running is over for me unless you're scared to death. I don't sprint and run anymore. I used to run track a lot in high school, but I don't do that anymore. But when you're scared, you'll run on water. I mean, when you have that happen.
Yeah. Were you sore the next day?
No, not really sore. But when I got to the edge of that field, where the property meets the field, and I was in the backyard, I was only probably 60 yards from it in the woods, okay? I stopped and I turned around, okay? And I said to myself, if this is what I think it is, I'm going to stand right here until I see it come out of the woods. I want to see it. I dropped my bow. I was bent over, crouched over, breathing heavy, trying to catch my wind. And I stood there, and I stood there, and I stood there, probably for 5, maybe 10 minutes. Never saw it. Never heard it take another step. Now, when you're in the woods and there's leaves all over, you cannot get in there silent. I mean, you or me, I'm 211 pounds. When you walk in the woods, you got to walk on your tippy toes because the crunch of the floor gives you away. So when there's something really big and I'm 75 yards from it, I'm over half of a football field away, and I can hear it loud coming through, walking like a human, and then it stops and don't come out. You tell me what it is. You know what I mean? And then when it yelled at me the first time to make me go to the ground, that scared. Then when the second one, I'm out of there, man. Okay, I'm out of here. I'm gone. So I never heard it walk away. I never heard it walk down through the woods because I would have been able to hear it from my position where I was. And it was gone. Like nothing.
Seeing isn't always believing, is it?
No. It's scarier. I think it's scarier to me. Honest to God. I can say this with almost 100% confidence. It's scarier to me to be out in the woods with no moon. You can't see the hand in front of your face. And you hear something this big moving around, agile, like a human. And then when you hear it run and you hear all the thump of the footfalls, you know this thing's big. And it's running. Not like a deer. It's running like a human being. That's more scary than I think if I saw one come out of the woods, to me. Because now I'm seeing what it is. It might be a little scary to see what it is, but, you know, when you don't see it and it's moving around you, that thing walked in behind me. It could have had, I really, honest to God, Kelly, I really thought that I was going to die out there. I made peace with everything. I thought, this thing is directly behind me. Is it going to charge me? Is it going to come down that gate? Because it would have had me. I had a bow. I didn't have a gun strapped to me, and I probably couldn't see it to shoot at it in the dark anyways because I can't see my hand. How am I going to see it? I mean, it could have swooped me up, whatever, and now I'm going to become one of the 411. You know what I mean? I thought I was going to die, man. I really did.
Ladies, yeah. Well, do you have nightmares because of this? You
know, that's the crazy thing out of this whole thing. I've never had one. Not one.
Interesting.
Yeah, not one nightmare. I have never had a dream about a Sasquatch. Nothing. Nothing.
That's interesting because I've had many. I experienced a tornado, and I will tell you that at least on 6 occasions, maybe as many as 12 occasions per year, annually, I will dream of tornadoes.
Really?
Tornado nightmares. Once in a while, I'll have a Sasquatch dream. I've never seen one. I've never experienced one, but I can imagine being in a moonless woods or forest.
You don't want to experience one, man. I'm telling you. These people, you know what? These people it blows my mind. They're gifting these things and supposedly they're getting gifts back. And now, listen, I really believe Sasquatch as an entity, people, animal. Look, it's not domesticated. It's not driving a car down the street. It's not coming home and cooking spaghetti or watching a football game. It is an animal, my friend. It might have people DNA in it, but it's an animal. It kills prey, it rips it apart, it eats it. Yeah. Okay? So until you can train one to drive a car, I'm not gifting anything. I'm not hunting for them. I'm not going out in the woods looking for them. I mean, I'll go deer hunt, but if they want me out of a particular area of where I am, I'm out. I'm out.
You know what, Scott, it's my inclination to believe that in areas where there are more people, they're sort of squeezed into a small corner to exist. They're not going to take human prey. They're just going to try to, hey, I'm here. You don't need to be here. This is all I have left.
Right.
So maybe they eat squirrels, they eat deer. There's so many deer in the Midwest. It's unbelievable. For those of us who grew up there, I live on the West Coast now. The white-tailed deer population has exploded, and everyone has them in their backyard. They're almost like squirrels. So there's a lot of prey for them. But that's why I don't think that they take humans as prey in those particular areas. Now, I'm not willing to give that a chance. I'm not willing to go out there and field test it, No. But listen, Scott, I wanted to thank you for joining us. I really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your experience. Folks, if you've had an encounter with something spooky from space or not quite from the human race, this is the place, I guess, to get on the witness stand and share your story. Like, comment, share, and above all else, subscribe. We do have a new Facebook page. Scott, by the way, are you a subscriber?
Yes, I am.
I love it. Well, you're gonna be on one of our better shows, fella, because we get the algorithm. But we do have a new Facebook page, and of course, it's called the Phenomenon Report. I'd like to populate that as soon as possible. And that, my friends, is the former bass player for Tower of Power and the OJs, Mr. Vito Sanfilippo.
Wow. I'm a musician. I'm a drummer, so I've been a working musician for 40 years. So.
Well, there you go. I play drums as well.
Yep.
Okay, here's my big end. Until we meet again, that thing living under your bed, hovering above your backyard and looking down at you from your window on the second floor, just may be real, and there's nothing you can do about it. Good night.